Hey friendo, Steve here. Welcome back to WrestleJuice. Thanks to John Cena for showing up on yesterday's episode. Man, it's great to have him pinch hit here every once in a while. Give old Steve a little break. Anyways, it's time for your hot takes. We're going to dive into your professional wrestling hot takes. We do this pretty much every week, so make sure you're subbed to the channel and you've hit that notify bell to make sure you're always notified whenever I have a new hot takes thread going up. Later on today, I'll probably post, or yesterday, probably already up, a good idea, bad idea thread, so keep an eye out for that. Hopefully you're subbed and you might get yours read on the show. First up from my good friendo, the son of my Pakistani belt maker. You guys had a bunch of Goldberg comments today. He says, Goldberg does deserve his farewell match. He was an influential wrestler of his time who gets underrated for his impact. And then there's another one here. Our good friendo Tyler Warden, who says, Goldberg's retirement match is going to be weird and not really get anyone over. Au contraire, Tyler. It'll get Goldberg over. Says they can't rely on mystique like with Taker's last match, so doing a cinematic thing isn't a good option. It'll be I don't know what he's going to say here. And anyway, a lot of you thumbs up that one, so a lot of you agree with Tyler Warden. So there's two takes here. One says it's going to be weird and not do anything for anybody except for maybe Goldberg. And then the son of the Pakistani belt maker says Goldberg does deserve his farewell match. This sort of match is a take I found from Emilio Sparks, who's a person I was on like a panel with one time. He does a lot of really cool stuff in the pro wrestling media sphere, and I really respect the guy's opinion. And he said something along the lines of, hey, you know what, Goldberg, I'm paraphrasing because I deleted Twitter off my phone. I don't know where it is. He said basically Goldberg was a big reason for the resurgence of pro wrestling in the late 90s, early 2000s, which I don't know. I'm old, so I remember being in the thick of being a wrestling fan back then, I should say. And so first, I guess we'll just sort of talk about Bill Goldberg's impact on pro wrestling. And if Bill Goldberg had disappeared from space and time, let's say Thanos got out the old Infinity Glove, gauntlet, and snapped Goldberg out of existence, he never existed, would wrestling be much different than it is today? Obviously, he came back to WWE in 2015, 2016, something like that, and had his run then with Brock Lesnar. So that's a prominent feud that would go away. But more importantly, his ascent in WCW and that great moment there at the Georgia Dome, whatever it was, with him and Hogan when he took the title off of Hogan. I'd actually argue, this is horrible, but maybe this is my own hot take, it's Steve's hot take. Goldberg did more harm than good in pro wrestling. I actually think that's accurate now that I think about it. For one thing, we would have had Bret Hart wrestling for another 10 years at least. That's true. Number two, if you guys remember, Goldberg's ascent in WCW actually killed the momentum of at least one person I can think of, maybe several others, namely Raven, who had just won the United States Championship before he was told, hey, guess what? You got to drop this thing to Bill Goldberg because we're making him a thing. As opposed to giving Raven the appropriate amount of momentum and kept that momentum going. WCW's biggest problem, the reason why they ended up completely failing, besides the dude being in charge after the merger, not wanting them to be around anymore, was not being able to bring up the wave of young stars that they had beyond Bill Goldberg. Goldberg obviously was a star. The guy has charisma. The guy has what it takes to be a big time pro wrestler. We saw that. That's obvious, right? But what they did to achieve that, I think probably did more harm than good in the end. WWE's ascent, WWF's ascent in 98, 99, in my opinion, that was the thing that brought wrestling up to where it was. If you were there, you know how popular Steve Austin was, how popular The Rock was. Everybody just blew up. And WWF was everywhere. And yes, WCW was still incredibly popular. The Monday Night War is a real thing, and WCW is super popular. That was originally my thing. The NWO obviously was super popular. Their shirts were everywhere. But you didn't need the NWO. NWO preceded Bill Goldberg. Arguably, they needed to shoehorn Bill Goldberg into the NWO story. That's when Bill Goldberg ended up beating Hogan. But if you took him out of the equation, I don't know, that would have been... Like, they might have come up with a better story idea for the end of Hulk Hogan's reign at the time. So, man, I don't know that Bill Goldberg didn't do more harm than good. I think that WCW would have achieved the heights they achieved without Bill Goldberg. And I feel like WWF would have been fine regardless if Bill Goldberg was there or not. I mean, at the time, a lot of people were just saying that he was a Stone Cold Steve Austin ripoff. Some of my friends, I remember them being like, oh, what the hell? He's just a dude with a bald white dude with a goatee and black trunks. What is he just trying to be Austin? And clearly, if you watch more than 10 seconds of it, he's neither the wrestler Steve Austin was, nor was he the promo Steve Austin was. It is a shame in the end we never got an Austin Goldberg like match once, the WCW had come to an end. But that being said, it's whatever. So what do you guys think? Bill Goldberg. Does he deserve a last big hurrah match in WWE? I think he does. I think his place in pro wrestling is a significant one. Although, I think I am probably one of those, in the opinion of son of the Pakistani belt maker, who does maybe feel like his impact is really not that big of a deal. He was, he was there in 98? By the time, 99 rolled around, 2000 certainly, like he wasn't even there anymore. I think that was when he injured himself, putting his hand through a car. And then he was gone. And then he was gone because WCW was gone until 2003. Then he came back and, his time in WWE was what it was. It was fine. Like he beat Triple H, I think, for the big gold belt, beat somebody for the big gold belt. I'll be honest with you. I kind of feel like the wrestling industry could have gone without Bill Goldberg and essentially remained unchanged. I don't think the same could be said for other names like Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, hell, even certainly Triple H. I think there's any number of other people that the wrestling industry would have been. If Hall and Nash didn't go to WCW, I think it would have been way different. I think their impact in pro wrestling was massive because of the NWO. I don't think that's the case with Bill Goldberg. I really don't. So anyways, who should his last match be against? I mean, clearly they set up a thing with Gunther. If you're going to put him in there with somebody, put him in there with somebody who knows how to wrestle really good, so they can cover the fact that Goldberg can't anymore. The last match he had was several years ago against Bobby Lashley. And that was actually a really fun match. Thanks to Bobby Lashley, guy's actually a really good wrestler. So I don't know, man. I was kind of a fan of Goldberg back in the day. I'm trying to be honest here. I was a fan of Goldberg back in the day, but I understood also sort of what he brought to the table, which really wasn't much. It wasn't. It's my opinion anyways. Amanin says, Finn Balor is never going to be used in any meaningful way ever again. Define meaningful. Because I feel like he still has a slew of good feuds in him. I still think that he's going to be a major part of this Judgment Day saga that's happening right now. I don't think he's going to be world champion because I think that there are too many really, really top names that still should be world champion, or that Triple H would probably end up putting the title on. But I think he'll be used. It just depends on what your definition of meaningful is. If you mean top guy main eventing, I agree with that. I think the ship has sailed. It's been 8 years since 2016. Because I think it was the SummerSlam 2016, wasn't it? Or 2015, 2016, I think, that he won the Universal title. He's not going to reach those heights again, that's for sure. But that being said, I really, I've appreciated how they've used Finn Balor over the past year or so. I've been cool with it. I do want him to come back, bring back that old theme song, though. I like Finn. People like Finn. They just want Finn to do well. Speaking of back in the day, Richard Ives says 1998 was the greatest year to be a wrestling fan. Oh man, I don't know. Yeah, maybe. I mean, if you're thinking it was everywhere and it was publicly acceptable to be a wrestling fan, and wearing NWO shirts out in public was kind of cool. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, that's a good point. Probably was. Probably was. I like now. You know why I like now? Because if you have Twitter, you can look at clips and YouTube. You can watch any pro wrestling all the time. They literally just unearthed some Hackenschmidt footage of a match. Well, that shit was boring. This one is a hot take. 8 Joe says, Shawn Michaels is the Marty Jannetty of DX? Wow. Woo. I don't think DX is interesting because there is no Marty Jannetty. It's like two, I don't know, they're like more like, the Mega Powers, but they were a tag team. Man, these guys are both running the whole shebang now, man. This one was thumbed up a bunch too from the Wallinator. Says the Fashion Files were the best comedy segments WWE's ever produced. Ever. For my money, the ones that come immediately to mind would actually be the Undisputed Era skits in NXT. That shit, like when Loomis was putting Roderick Strong in a car trunk. Boy, that shit was funny. I really like that stuff. And it wasn't even pure comedy. They like injected, it was like some serious stuff too. So I don't know. That just sort of comes to mind. I love the Fashion Files. I think they're great though. Ray Markable says there's no such thing as go home booking anymore. Neither WWE or AEW have shown they abide by that trope anymore, but the phrase is still used most predictions videos prior to a pay-per-view or premium live event. Yeah, because it totally is a thing. What are you talking about? Nia Jax gave Liv Morgan the Annihilator and then lost. I'm trying to think of the other matches on that last pay-per-view. What was the last pay-per-view? It just happened. Crown Jewel. That's what it was. What are the other matches there? Cody and Gunther. Yeah, Cody beat Gunther. Gunther had him in the choke before their match. Cody won that match. Yeah, you go home at the still thing. Sure. Aldo says the Bloodline is killing SmackDown. It eats up too much time every week. How are other talents supposed to get over when, I'm assuming he's saying, I'm not going to open up this window here. I'm assuming when there's so much Bloodline on there. Well, you know what? In about 2 months, not going to be an issue because SmackDown's going to be 3 hours. So us Bloodline fans are going to be eating good because maybe there's going to be even more Bloodline. I'm fine with it. I think the Bloodline stuff is really good. So I'm happy with it. Los Diablo del Nacho says, the Nacho Devil. Says the women's main event scene on Raw is an absolute joke. And the Rhea versus Liv feud is responsible. Well, Triple H is responsible. But I agree with this. It is. I like that Io is now the number one contender because she's awesome. But yeah, you got to start building up people like Lyra Valkyrie. Chico Sweet 666, the devil, says not really a hot take, but I think The-Bar is one of the most overlooked and underrated, even though they won the tag titles. Tag teams of recent memory, their best of 7 was great. I agree with this. I think you're right. I think they are underrated. I think they don't get enough attention. And I think they were awesome. I'd like to see a reunion one day. Kylo Ren 3145 says people are excited to see CM Punk's promos when Raw moves to Netflix, but they're going to be the same. He's going to come out and tell us he's a dangerous man, make a baseball or hockey reference, and talk about his wife and dog. Damn. You just put Phil on blast. I kind of agree with this, though. I don't think he's going to say... He might say shit. I think they'll let him say shit just to show people, hey, it's new. This is a different thing now. Skip to the End says American Male's theme song was legit awesome and you can't change my mind. I actually agree with this. It sounds like an actual pop song from the time. It really does. It's like equal parts like Van Halen and like Devo. It's weird. It's actually a really legit theme song. AJ Otani says Baron Corbin's the most televised fumble in WWE history. The amount of time he spent on screen, both on main roster and NXT, all the gimmicks, the end of days, retiring angle, all of these things just to quietly not be used, etc., etc. I agree with this. I agree with this completely. I think he's a huge fumble. Damian Sandow was a huge fumble, but Baron Corbin consistently over the last, 10 years? 8 years? When you look at him back in NXT, like the crowd would count like how long his matches were. Because like he would go on a streak where none of his matches would go past like 30 seconds. And he came off like a badass. And then he came to main roster and they just completely screwed him. Boy, they screwed him bad. Vince, there had to have been some sort of relationship between Baron and Vince that led to how he was booked. Because Vince loved to just try to humiliate the guy. I wonder if Baron would like speak truth to Vince sometimes. And Vince hates that shit. Afe. AIHF says the new Bloodline story would have been 10 times more interesting and effective if Solo and Jimmy swapped roles. I agree with this so fucking much. I understand they want like the big like thing, but I hadn't even considered this. I think this is probably right, man. I do. This could have been so interesting. And I think that I like where the Bloodline's at now, but there was that huge chunk of time between like Mania and I don't know, a couple pay-per-views ago when Roman came back and teamed with Cody, that it was like kind of just felt like it was the same thing week after week after week. If Jimmy wasn't Solo's role, recruiting people from the outside that Jay had wanted no part of, that could have been really interesting. I like this idea. I think this is actually a really cool idea. John and Alistair Voice says trading finishers spot immediately makes a match a 4-star minimum. I agree. I love that shit. I love when people are, oh my God, Rock just gave Austin a stunner. We're going to end on this one. Luisa Reza says Steve is an LA Knight hater. Whenever I hear Steve talk about him, it's always negative. He just doesn't want the IWC to come after him. I like LA Knight. I think he's incredibly entertaining. I was not a fan of the triple threat match. A lot of people say I should give it another shot. Maybe I should. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll revise my star rating on it. I like LA Knight. I just think that sometimes they put him in stuff where he doesn't really fit all that well. I like LA Knight, though. I'm a firm LA Knight fan. Yeah. Anyways, tell you what, that's going to do it for... Oh, where'd I go? There I am. Anyways, that's going to do it for the show today. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I appreciate it. Be sure to hit that sub button, notify bell, and hit that thumbs up. Till next time, we'll talk to you guys later.